of experience of having worked with the financial sector. Now, in his current role, his research focuses on technology trends, customer behavior, and customer expectations in the global retail banking sector. He's now going to be talking to us and exploring this next session that's titled Connected Financial Services, Transformation Through Open Frameworks, where he's going to try and suggest to us strategies that business leaders can adopt to digitize the core and also respond to disruption happening out there in the market, and why not create their own disruption happening out there in the markets through connected financial services. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jerry Silva. Good afternoon. Jerry, tell me one thing to start with. We all around us see financial institutions struggling to retain client relationships, struggling to balance costs, struggling to increase revenue. We see few organizations responding to this disruption and creating initiatives to deal with it, but we see fewer in number who challenge this legacy framework that's come down to them, that's really the hindrance, in the way of this transformation. Why is there still this attitude of let's shut the alarm clock and sleep for a few more minutes?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. First of all, after the economic crisis, the need was there for consumer expectations. Right? Consumers became disloyal to financial services. At the same time, smartphones started coming up in prevalence 2008, 2009, and a lot of smaller startups, fintechs in the financial services space, rushed in to fill those expectations the customer had. So that created a crisis at the time. And in financial services, the response was, let's fix the front office. Let's fix the front end, let's do mobile banking, let's do mobile payments, and less attention was paid to the back. Nowadays, we're years beyond that point now, and it's not enough. So with all due respect to Saurabh, the front office is still very important, customer experience is still very important, but as technology starts leveling the playing field, now we have to focus on the back office and say, what can we do to become really innovative and disruptive?
Take it on.
Thank you. So at the risk of losing my job, especially with my boss here in the front of the audience, I'm going to go off script a little and talk about food. Starting with a confession, and that is when I arrived in the country last Saturday. I told my colleagues at IDC that Indian food wasn't one of my favorite foods. Sorry. And to be honest, it was probably a stronger statement than that. But over the last week, thanks to my colleague and new friend Chris Holmes, he's taught me that Indian food here, or I should say, Indian food back in the United States is nothing like the Indian food here. You don't call it Indian food, you call it food, but the level of quality that I've tasted over the last week is unbelievable. And I started thinking about this last night, and I said, well, what's the difference between the food there and the food here? And I came to the realization that most of the ingredients are the same, especially the ingredients that are up front or on top. The vegetables, the meats, the lentils, beans. We have the same things in the U.S. It's the underlying preparation, it's the underlying care, the underlying quality of the ingredients used in the recipe that are really making the difference. Now, I don't know a lot about Indian food. I don't cook Indian food on a regular basis. The Indian food that I receive in the U.S. seems to come out of a box. It's pretty much the same everywhere, which I think is one of the problems. And that's really the analogy back to the technology in most institutions. The front office world is about changing peppers for carrots or putting extra onions in or something like that. Something with better with higher quality ingredients up front. But in the U.S., they really haven't attacked that backside. Now, again, I don't know a lot about Indian food preparation and things like that. But I do know about Spanish cooking. My family's Spanish and Mexican. And has anyone ever heard of paella? You know what paella is? Okay, a few of you. It's very much like biryani. Am I pronouncing that right? Biryani. Particularly because they both use saffron. And saffron is the underlying, I guess, fragrance of that dish. Well, in paella, when you prepare it, you prepare it typically in a very large, very shallow dish. It has rice, it has vegetables, it has meat, but it has this ingredient called sofrito. And to make sofrito, again, you use onions, and actually another one of my colleagues here, John, his recipe when I did it last time. It's onions, it's garlic, it's olive oil, paprika, and then saffron, obviously, on top of it. And the preparation of the sofrito varies. You can change ingredients, and no one ever notices the sofrito and the saffron in a dish. And these not just they think about what was in it. They think, what did it have? Prawns? Did it have chicken? Did it have sausage? Did it have carrots? Did it have peas? They think about that at an unconscious level, but subconsciously, when you have a really good paella, it's not those ingredients, those upfront obvious ingredients. It's that sofrito that really makes the difference, that makes you come back to that particular restaurant, or in the case of John, his home, when he prepares, when he and I prepare, that makes you really remember that, makes it a memorable experience. So I'm going to argue through this. I'm not going to show you every slide here because I know talking about food is just going to make you hungrier for lunch. So I'm going to skip some slides. You're going to have all the data, and I'll be around so you can talk to me afterwards about some of the things that we talk about here. And I'll start with, and you're going to see these slides, these upfront slides from every one of the IDC presenters. So what is digital transformation? What does it mean? I'm not going to go through this. You're going to get this information throughout the conference. The third platform, I'm sure you'll hear information about what we consider to be a third platform: cloud mobility, big data, and social. And then some of the innovation acceleration. And by the way, I'll just say very briefly, in financial services, what's been happening lately is that there are a couple of ingredients that tend to be really important in making that basic infrastructure of the bank, and that is data, the data markets, AI that operates on that data, and then cloud. Because you're not going to have all of that intelligence in-house, so you have to go out-of-house to get that intelligence at some point. This is a slide for the U.S. We just recently did global numbers in terms of digital transformation technology spending in banking and financial services. So this is banking, securities, and insurance. This is strictly retail banking in the U.S. You can see spending in 2017 is over $20 billion. It's growing $37.5 billion by 2020. Globally, the new numbers are, I apologize for not having updated this. Globally, financial services in 2017 is spending $93 billion, growing to $170 billion by 2020. It's a substantial amount of spending. And in fact, this is right behind manufacturing, telecom, and professional services in terms of industries that are spending the most money on digital transformation. This today, in 2017, constitutes 20% of the total IT budget in financial services. By 2020, it will be a third of total IT spending in FI. Figure it out, it's about a 23% growth rate, which is amazing. 23% growth in digital transformation spending compared to 4.5% growth in total IT spending in financial services. So it's clearly an important subject. I'll skip some of these graphs again in the interest of time. This just breaks out where the spending is taking place, and it's really across the board, particularly in the growth. The absolute numbers are a little different. Hardware is not that big of a number going forward. But certainly software, services, and internal. Internal is really important as well. How much money are you spending on internal staff to be able to do digital transformation? So again, another graph you've seen time and time again from IDC folks. This one we did specifically for the banking sector. And last summer we ran a survey, and we found about the same. It's not much different from every other industry that you can see out there. Most of the group here is in that stage 2, stage 3. And so there's room for growth, obviously. And very, very few institutions that are out at the optimized level. And here we talk about folks like BBVA, clearly State Bank of India is up at this level as well. So there's much more room for growth, and not so many still left at the ad hoc stage. One of the graphs that I want to talk about, that's not on this presentation, but I can certainly make it available, is during that same survey we asked institutions, how do you define digital transformation in terms of front office, back office, enterprise? Globally speaking, all of the institutions that we surveyed globally, 40% of them said that digital transformation is a front office only initiative. So there again, going to the initial question, why is the front office been so important? Because traditionally, for the last 8 or 9 years, that's where the needs been. So that's where the institutions are putting their money. 20% globally said that it's a back office only initiative. And then another 20% said it's enterprise-wide. Now, in the case of Asia Pacific, it was actually at 40% of the front office, but that enterprise-wide view is a little higher, about 30%. So you're clearly looking more at enterprise-wide initiatives in this region. The other question we asked in that survey was, once you complete digital transformation or get far enough down the line, because it is all about bringing in new business models and being able to expand what you're doing with your servers, what would be under consideration? What would you think about doing? And this first one, the highest number, I really felt great about. And as they said, if we could turn digital transformation and make financial inclusion economically viable, that's where we would go. 83% on a global basis. And regional split outs weren't that much different. So 83% would set financial inclusion. And over the last week, I've learned a lot about what you're doing in India around financial inclusion, and that's fantastic. If you look at the next three, it has to do with extending the value chain. For about I'll mention a couple of examples later on. It's about creating one-stop exchanges or SME communities for those customers. And then being able to leverage white label services. There's a really scary case study coming out of Germany where a fintech company has developed a back-end core, open API core, but they don't have, and they got a license from the government of Germany to actually be a bank, but they don't want customers. They've created this foundational technology, and they allow fintechs to plug in. So if you're a fintech that does prepaid cards, they'll supply the general ledger, they'll supply the accounting systems, they'll supply the regulatory compliance, and you can deal with your customers. This is, I mean, out of all of fintechs, this is the most disruptive model I've seen today. So the thing they have in common is connectivity. Anybody recognize the scene moving? Those science fiction fans here. So this is just one person. So this is a scene from a movie called 2001, Space Odyssey. It came out a long, long time ago. But in this scene, this black thing, this black monolith shows up out of nowhere. And the primitive men or the apes that are around it don't know what to make of it. And they throw stuff at it, they beat at it, and it just remains solid, unmoving, unchanging. This is today's bank core system. You can't change it, you can't move it, it's hard to do anything with this thing. This is the biggest hurdle for digital transformation in the back office or an institution. If we look at an conceptual architectural drawing, what that architecture looks like, the banking architecture, you've got the front office applications up front, they're all kind of different. You've got business logic, and at best you have individual pieces of business logic at some abstracted layer, and then you still have this huge monolithic black core that you need to change to be innovative at all, and that's driving the data. Any kind of partnerships you do with external value providers, or even any kind of product development that you do internally, is typically a one-to-one integration of. It's a single project you deal with. Even if you're API enabled, you're dealing with one kind of API, you do it once, and you can never read it again. When I talk to core banking vendors, and they all say, oh yeah, we're componentized. I say, well, that's great, Car. You know, can I plug in some other value provider? Can I plug in some application without development? Usually the answer is no. So this is really the biggest hurdle to digital transformation, again, in the back office. That survey, we asked folks where those challenges were. And the top two challenges for the digital core were advanced analytics, and I mentioned at the beginning, cloud and data and AI are going to play a big role in overcoming this challenge. The second one was making technology more open and agile. Agile is a big deal right now in financial services, and it's going to come up with a couple of challenges. How do I make the architecture itself agile? And we're saying you do that by using open API frameworks. But then secondly, how you get into an agile development. Not a lot of institutions know how to do that. What you want to wind up with eventually is this kind of picture. Now, this is not a real technical architecture. This is more conceptual than anything else. But in conversations we're having with both financial institutions and vendors, this is kind of where we're going. At the very bottom is what remains at the core. You've taken out most of the business logic, and what remains is general ledger, transaction processing, access to data. When I mentioned this to someone else, I was talking to them about the concept, and they said, well, you can call it the intelligent core. And I said, well, you clearly don't understand what I'm trying to explain. This is about as dumb as you can get. It's very, very fast, it's very, very reliable. That remains the system of record. But everything else you pulled out of it. And again, in those conversations with institutions, they said, well, we have a layer where we want to share resources. So that could be a function like get account balance. a number of channels, a number of products might use that function. And so they're creating those across a shared business logic layer. And then you have an API gateway. The importance of that API gateway is you don't necessarily want all of your developers to have access to those very basic core functions. On top of that, you build all of the differentiating business models. Mind you, as I discuss this, don't think about these as components using proprietary APIs. These are all open APIs. There's a number of vendors that can provide open API frameworks to get this job done. Once you've done that, you publish two separate kinds of libraries. There's an internal library of APIs that your own business leaders, your own programmers can use to develop more products and services using internal resources. And then a secondary set of external facing APIs where you've got governance, you've got security, you've got control over who's using them, how they're using them, so on and so forth. This is the most important part, or the most important forgotten part of digital transformation. We could talk all day about innovation internally and whether or not you can do that, but it's that external part. And later on this afternoon, my other colleague, Michael Arenado, is going to go into how you can use fintechs to your advantage to be able to drive more value down into the institution. So those, a couple of the open API frameworks that we're working with in the US today, these folks are out there, and banks should be leveraging these frameworks when they're thinking about redoing their core systems. What you wind up with, and this will be the last slide I talk about, what you wind up with is a connected financial institution where you're driving value from different partners, not just within yourself. Clearly within yourself is important, but you're actually able to bring in partners from outside easily, not with that single kind of integration step for every individual project, but bring them in easily, drop them if necessary, bring in more, and deliver value to your customers. Now, a couple of cases where this is working is a French bank that's able to drive home ownership, not mortgages, home ownership. So the bank actually connects to estate agents, they connect to tax bureaus, they connect to even landscaping services. So the bank customer can actually start the buying process at home from within their online presence. And they can talk to estate agents, they can look at properties, they can look at tax implications. And they're all doing all of that through the actual bank portal. Fantastic. There's a bank in the US that's doing the same thing with car ownership. So instead of going to a car dealer, looking at a car you like, and then they have to talk to their finance company, or you go back to your bank and apply for a loan, you do it all on the bank portal. You do it all on the bank website. You can look at the cars, you can buy the car, you can pay the taxes of the car, all through that bank website. Another bank in the U.S. Decided that it wanted to increase its SME lending. And so instead of building an origination system, it was old, it was legacy, it was not very innovative. So instead of building their own, and it's a fairly large super regional bank in the U.S., instead of building their own, they created an open API portal for other fintechs and actually had kind of a small competition. And they chose one fintech vendor. And now that fintech vendor connects it to the bank. The fintech vendor itself does all of the origination. It's the experience, it's the collection of documentation, it's the digital signatures, everything up to the point of underwriting. And at that point, it turns into a bank experience. The bank does the underwriting, the funding, the servicing, everything else. This is all enabled by that open API framework. One of the questions we asked at the end of the survey last year was to what extent, so we were talking a lot to line of business leaders as well as IT leaders, and we asked the line of business leaders to give us some indication of where they thought IT played a role. And by the way, one of the things that we see more and more of is line of business not only funding these things. If I go back to this slide, one of the implications of this slide is where the core banking system investments used to happen only from the IT perspective. The CIO held the budget. In this kind of scenario, one of the biggest advantages is you're de-risking the migration of core from one system to another. The old bring and replace model of let's pull the entire core out, put another one in, and then migrate the customers over. It's too expensive, it takes too long. Frankly, if you're a CIO, it's a career limiting move if it fails. And so using this kind of an architecture, you can take your existing legacy core, if that's where you are, and start pulling business logic out, funded by the line of business, based on risk management on which line of business goes first. So not only from a technology perspective, but from a business perspective, it makes sense in terms of progressive transformation. So getting back to the survey question, we asked, what is the role of the IT organization? And you can see here 32% of line of business said it's around innovation, help us to innovate. 25% said help us with the technology aspects of digital transformation. And then 24% said project management, we don't know how to manage it. So while I said that line of business is actually kind of taking the lead in terms of budgeting, in terms of prioritization, they still need help from the institutions. Now it's funny, Vikas mentioned earlier, a great quote, he said something like, you don't need to own the assets, you don't need to own the resources to be digitally dominant. And that's absolutely true. Because in the case of financial services, over the last 14 years that we've been tracking the data, the amount of spending from internal resources to external service providers, that could be hardware, software, services, has doubled in terms of proportion. So banks are spending twice as much on external resources, external help, as they did 10 to 13 years ago. So our call to action, when we talk to institutions about digital transformation, particularly the back office, the core, the first is invest in the open API architectures. Open API architectures is the future of that infrastructure for core banking. Augment the front office. What I'm talking about today doesn't mean drop everything you're doing on mobile or online, or even branch transformation is a big topic as well. How do I digitally enable branch through digital marketing, one-on-one mobility for staff? Don't drop that, but you have to augment it. I often give the example of when they built the English Channel Tunnel, they didn't start on the English side and work their way toward France, or start with France and work their way toward the UK. They started at both ends, and they met in the middle. And that's really what we're talking about here. So where we've already kind of started on the front office a number of years ago, now we're starting in the back office, and we're going to be able to be committed and successfully implement digital transformation. And finally, prepare to partner. That goes to my last point. You're not going to do this by yourself. I'll give you a quick example. In the U.S., there are over 6,500 banks. 6,500 banks. There are 75 AI developers in the entire country, for financial institutions, for banking. Those resources, AI developers, AI architects, are extremely scarce. So I forget who mentioned this morning, David and JD, make sure you place your bets in terms of who you're partnering with to get those resources that you don't have. So I've got 1 second left, but essentially what I'm saying is that when you're making that paella, you have all kinds of flexibility. You can buy the ingredients instead of buying the box that says, add water, add rice, and you got paella. Now you can buy whatever ingredients, fine tune it to your wok, however you want to taste it. And that's really going to be the essence of having differentiation. So, thanks for listening, and good luck.